In this video, we're going to quickly step through the baking process to bake all the high resolution detail down to our low polygon target. So what I have here is the retypo mesh that we copied previously when using the cloth tool. I've already done the UVs, but I'm going to quickly redo them for the benefit of those who may be brand new to 3D Coat. So let me go to the UV section, and I'll choose one of these options to open up my UV tools. And let's go ahead and clear the seams, and I'll just do it from scratch. I also want to hide the chainmail object because it's so heavy, hiding it will take quite a load off your graphic card. With marked seams, it's a little bit more flexible because you can click individual edges, whereas in edge loops, it's going to try and find contiguous edges to select loops. Okay, so let me clear the seams. Also with marked seams, you can limit it if you want. You can click here and then hold down the shift key and it will basically stop at this edge. Hold down the shift key and you can see how that works. Clear seams again. So yeah, I can hold down the shift key, or in this case I'm going to use edge loops. Let me go ahead and use UV path real quick. This one is especially helpful when you're using auto retypo, or maybe you have a triangulated mesh and it's a little more difficult to select your seams. This is a point-to-point seam selection. So I can click my first point and just kind of walk around, and it will select the closest path in between the two. I can also click here, and then after I've laid it down, I can click it again and drag it wherever I need. Now I have a preview of the seam, but it hasn't created one just yet. I need to hit the enter key, and it will. Now this little purple dot just let me know that this tool is still active. So if I wanted to work from this point and create a seam down this way, I can, but I don't. So I'll hit escape. Now let's go back to edge loops. That looks good. It gives you a preview, and then when you like it, you can just click. Now let's click unwrap, and we can see it here. Let's left mouse click on the UV island, and now we can transform it. We can move it about, rotate it if we need. There are other tools here for maybe flipping it, rotating counterclockwise, and so on. And when I control click, it will deselect it. I can also see the checker pattern here. I can change it to a complex checker or a custom texture if I need. So it looks good. And we are now ready to bake. Let's go to the bake menu. And again, I want to make sure that my high poly object is visible now. Go to the bake menu. In this case, because of the chainmail, I want to see some displacement in the viewport. So I'll choose this option. Then we'll get the bake scan settings dialog, where we can preview the inner shell and the outer shell. With the inner shell, you have an option directly to the right, allowing you to toggle ghosting. And that way it will give you some transparency of the voxel object so that you can see the inner cage. The objective here is to have this inner cage as close to the voxel object without it poking through. And conversely, with the outer cage, we also want this to be as close to the voxel object without any of the voxel object poking through. As you can see, if I scale it too large, then I can get some self-intersection problems here, and that could make it more difficult to get a good bake. You'll probably get the best results by having both cages as close to the voxel object as possible. And if you have to, you can tweak with your brush here. This is going to pull along the normal, so keep that in mind. If you want to switch it up to where you're pushing along the normal instead of pulling, you can hold down the control key and it will switch to this option on the fly. Or you could just manually click this. You can relax with your brush and you can flatten. You can also save and reload later on all these settings. You can reset to default. You can increase the strength or decrease it here. as you're making tweaks. So for example, on the outer shell, I can tweak the armpit region, but I first need to get out of UV mode. I'll control click and select any of the create or tweak tools, such as the brush. All right, so let's go back to bake, and we'll select outer shell here. To increase your brush size, you just right click and drag to the right. To decrease it, you can right click and drag to the left. I'm just going to kind of tap in these areas rather than brush. All right, now let's go to the inner shell. Toggle ghosting. So this one, I'm just going to leave it the same way. But again, if I want to invert the action, I can hold down the control key. I'll skip forward while I tweak this. Let's go ahead and click OK. The next dialog that we're going to look at is the import object for per pixel painting. We can pick our normal map preset from this list menu. And your subdivision, it's very important to remember, if you choose a subdivision level here, you'll still have the option to export this version of your mesh. Subdividing it will just allow you the option to use the tweak room to tweak with sculpting tools and or regular transform tools your paint object. The option in the export dialog will be low polygon and mid polygon. Mid polygon will be the subdivision level you choose in this list menu. And then low polygon will be this version with no subdivision. If you're in a rush or in a pinch and you don't have time to do UVs, you can auto map here. Let's go and choose a 4K map. You can change the UV name if you need. Okay. Now that our bake is done, the first thing you'll notice when we go to the paint room is that both the new paint object and the voxel sculpt object are visible in the viewport. After baking, you probably want to hide your voxel object, so you can either go here to the root and click on the visibility icon, or in the view menu, uncheck show voxels in paint workspace. So here is our resulting mesh, and I'm going to turn wireframe on with the 4 key. We can go to the view menu and uncheck show displaced mesh so that we can see the wireframe more clearly. Let's turn wireframe off, and now we're seeing basically the normal map result. Let's go back to the view menu and recheck show displaced mesh once again. We don't have quite enough polygons to show the displacement properly, so what we want to do is go to adjust tessellation. This is much like adding a subdivision modifier in a host 3D application. You can apply subdivision per UV map. Okay, and Shazam. Now it's a much closer representation. And with that, we will conclude this series on creating chainmail in 3D Coat. If you found this video or any even remotely helpful, make sure to hit the like button. It's the only way for us to know if we are indeed providing a benefit. So thanks again, and we'll see you next time.